Celtics, new trade offer, real or clickbait? If you're listening to me right now on the Celtics Talk Show, I only ask you one thing before anything else. Breathe and hold on tight, because what has started to circulate in the last few hours is the kind of idea that, even when we think we've seen everything in the NBA, still manages to surprise. And I'm not talking about little changes to adjust rotation, no. I'm talking about that proposal that, when you read it the first time, you go back to check if you didn't get it wrong, if you didn't mix up names, if you didn't fall into one of those internet delusions. It's at that level. Because think with me, the NBA thrives on two things at the same time: of reality, which is what happens on the court, and of imagination, which is what franchises, executives, and the media project as the next step. And when these two things meet, then the type of rumor is born that dominates fan conversations, becomes a video, becomes a debate, becomes an infinite discussion. And the Celtics, the way they are, with the size they have, are always a catalyst for this type of story. All it takes is a big enough possibility, and that's it. The basketball world stops to look. The starting point here is simple to understand. The Boston Celtics are experiencing a season in which, regardless of what anyone expected at the beginning, the team showed strength, depth, and an ability to reinvent itself when circumstances got tough. And in this scenario, when many people imagined that the team could feel a gigantic blow, a collective response appeared. And mainly an individual response appeared that changed the reading of everything. Jaylen Brown playing at a very high level, sustaining the team in moments of turbulence and proving once again that the Celtics have a core that is not easily shaken. And that's where this story gains heat, because it's not just the Celtics are fine. It's the Celtics are healthy, and if the pieces come back healthy at the right time, the playoff conversation completely changes. When you put this on the table and combine it with the expectation of seeing Jayson Tatum in a position to contribute when it matters most, you understand why any proposal that points to a definitive leap becomes a fire. It's as if someone said, "Do you think the Celtics are already strong? What if I told you that we can make this even more overwhelming?" Now, on the other side, there is the Miami Heat. And here you can't pretend that there isn't contrast. Miami is a proud franchise, with a strong identity, with a consolidated culture, but which often lives in a dangerous space, the space between being a real contender for the title and being really bad enough to rebuild with high picks. This halfway point is cruel because it swallows seasons. You're not at the top, but you're not at the bottom either. You fight, you bother, you win some big games, but you can't take the final step. And at the same time, there is no draft compensation to restart with a generational talent in your lap. It's a place that drains fans' energy and patience. And when a franchise is stuck in this limbo, internal conversations change. Not necessarily because someone wants to give up, but because the math of the roster and salary cap starts to push decisions. That's where those ideas that seem impossible come in. What if we clean the board? What if we turn a pillar of the team into assets? What if the path now is to accumulate choices and flexibility? No one likes to hear this about their own team, but it's exactly the type of reasoning that appears when the result doesn't justify the cost. And, according to the proposal that has been attributed to Dan Favale from Bleacher Report, it is at this point that the script becomes almost cinematic. A three-team swap that would put Bam Adebayo in Boston. Just saying that sentence makes you feel the weight, because Bam is not just any name. He has been the Heat's defensive heart for years. He is that type of player who doesn't just appear in the points statistics, but also appears in the team's behavior. He's the guy who changes markings, who holds the perimeter when needed, who protects the rim, who communicates, who organizes. And more than that, he does the work that, in playoffs, separates good teams from champion teams. Bam has this reputation as a postseason player, as a player with intensity, as a player who doesn't disappear when the game gets physical. So imagine for a second what a Celtics defense would be like with Bam Adebayo as the anchor, especially in a scenario where you already have strong, versatile wings with size, with the ability to guard multiple positions. You start drawing in your head and realize that the conversation stops being the Celtics are contenders and becomes, how does someone score 4 times in 7 games against this team? That's why so many people look at this idea and say, this isn't just an exchange, this is a change in hierarchy. The proposal, as it circulates, tries to balance the interests of 3 sides. Boston, receiving Bam Adebayo and Justin Champagnie, Miami getting Anfernee Simons, Hugo Gonzalez, and a hefty package of draft assets, including a 2026 first-round pick, a 2031 pick swap, a 2031 first-rounder, and a 2031 second-rounder. And the Washington Wizards coming in to absorb Bashar adjust pieces and receive Sam Hauser, as well as second-round picks, Brooklyn 2026 via Miami and Boston 2032. It's that classic big exchange model. One team receives the star, another team receives volume and future, and the third acts as a facilitator to match contracts and interests. And this is where I want to talk to you calmly, like we do here on the Celtics Talk Show, because this type of idea stirs emotions, but it needs to go through a rational filter. From the Celtics' point of view, you can understand why they call this nirvana for their style of play. Bam is a modern center in the fullest sense of the word. He doesn't force you to play just one way. He doesn't hold you back. It expands possibilities. You can change markings without fear. You can move up the defensive line. You can adjust coverage. You can survive in decisive possessions when the opponent tries to hunt your pivot on the perimeter. And in the playoffs, that's worth its weight in gold. And offensively, Bam is not a black hole. He's not the guy who receives and stops the attack. On the contrary, he can pass from the high post. He can hand off. He can punish from mid-range when he is confident. He can attack in transition. He can be the type of piece that makes his wingers' lives easier. Because when you have Tatum and Brown, and here I'm talking about concept, cast identity, what you want most is someone who increases the mental space of the game for them. Someone who absorbs contact, who opens angles, who makes the right pass at the right time, who is enough of a threat not to be ignored. Bam, at his best, delivers this. Now, let's say what needs to be said. Bringing a contract this size is no joke. It's not a video game. There is a salary cap. There are rules. There is fit. There is a domino effect on the rest of the squad. When a team adds an additional star with a high financial impact, it is saying, we chose our core. We will pay for it. And we will accept the sacrifices around. And those sacrifices could be depth. They could be flexibility. They could be future choices. That's why, even when it looks perfect on the court, you need to ask yourself, what is the real cost, and how long is that cost sustainable? But at the same time, this is exactly how dynasties are born. It is not with eternal caution. It's with decision. It is with that movement that defines an era. And if you think historically, the Celtics have always had moments when the team looks at what they're building and says, okay, we're close. Now is the time to put in the piece that changes the level. In 2008, Garnett's arrival was that. It wasn't just talent. It was identity. It was leadership. It was a now we are serious. So, when one imagines Bam Adebayo arriving to join a cast led by Tatum and Brown, the subtext is this. This right here is the move that turns a winning project into a machine ready to dominate. You put together a mental quintet with Bam, Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and a healthy Tatum, and you start to see a team with suffocating defense, with the ability to alternate rhythm, with energy, with physical imposition, and with the talent to decide big games. But every story has another side, and Miami's side is the most emotionally delicate, because trading Bam would be admitting something that Heat fans, out of pride and culture, don't want to admit, that the current cycle needs to be redone. And no matter how many picks you get, no matter how many expiring contracts come in, nothing replaces the feeling of, we're giving up our cornerstone. Bam represents Miami in a lot of ways. Intensity, marking, presence, leadership. And giving it up isn't just a transaction, it's a shock to the team's identity. Bleacher Report's logic, it seems, tries to justify this with the idea of organized reconstruction. Simons enters as an immediate and flexible scorer under contract. Gonzalez enters as a young player with a development profile. Picks are used as ammunition. Either you use them to draft, or you use them to exchange for another star when the opportunity arises. And the money that comes out of the payroll opens up space to reposition the cast over time. It is coherent reasoning from the future point of view, but it is painful from the who I am today point of view. And there's an important detail. Decisions like this in the NBA almost always depend on two things at the same time. They depend on the competitive context and depend on leadership decisions. Pat Riley has built a reputation for being aggressive in pursuing stars, not exactly being patient in taking things apart. So the big question, the question that separates amusing rumor from possible real age, is, would Miami have the stomach to pull the trigger? And if so, under what conditions? Because it's one thing for the media to draw scenarios. It's another thing for a historic executive to look at his locker room and say, let's change the era now. And this is where I like to bring you into the conversation, because as a Celtics fan, the first reaction is often pure excitement. I understand. You can imagine the Garden on playoff nights. You can imagine the defense with Bam suffocating possessions. You can imagine the team with absurd security in a tight game. And you can imagine a powerful narrative. The Celtics, not just as a candidate, but as the reference in the East. But I want to invite you to go beyond the dream for a moment and think, what would the Celtics have to give up for this to happen in terms of the future and supporting cast? And more, is this support that comes out replaceable? Because sometimes we underestimate the value of pieces that last long seasons. Sometimes we look at the brightness of the star and forget that a title can also be won with rotation, with fit, with continuity. At the same time, I'm not going to pretend that the seduction side doesn't exist, because it exists. Adebayo is the type of player you don't find on the market every day. He is, potentially, that piece that solves a structural problem in any series. High-level defensive versatility with the ability to sustain the attack without blocking the game of its main scorers. This is very rare. And when it's rare, the price goes up. And when the price goes up, you enter the territory of futures picks, swaps, packages, complex trades. That's how the league works. So what's my verdict in the most honest way possible? As a story, it is explosive. As a basketball idea, it's fascinating. As he fits in on the court, you can understand why this became a topic. If a player like Bam joins an already strong core, it feels like you're not just adding talent, you're adding a layer of inevitability. You're telling the league, to beat us, you're going to have to be perfect. And being perfect 4 times in 7 games against a defense like that is a thankless task. But, as a reality, I put a big question mark. Because the hardest part is not Boston wanting it. The hardest part is for Miami to accept it. And accept not just for mathematics, but for identity. If this proposal were to actually happen, it would probably be accompanied by a very specific context. An internal feeling within Heat that the cycle is over, a conviction that the middle path leads nowhere, and an opportunity seen as irrefutable. And that, in the NBA, is always possible, but not always likely. And now I want to hear you. Really. I want to know how this hits you as a Celtics fan. Do you look at Bam Adebayo's idea in Boston and think, this is the last piece? Or do you look at it and think, the cost could compromise what we've already built? Do you think Miami would have the courage to make such a radical turnaround? And if they did, do you think the Celtics would be creating a new balance of power in the East, one that changes the way everyone builds rosters? Write here in the comments of the Celtics Talk Show what you would do if you were in the front office chair. Do you pull the trigger on this exchange? Do you adjust any parts? Do you think this is media fantasy or that there is a real path to something like this? I'm going to read everything, because this is the type of subject that deserves serious debate, without rushing, without exaggeration, but with passion, because that's what the NBA lives by, and that's what we live by here. If you like this analysis and want me to continue bringing these conversations in depth, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. And stay tuned, because if there's one thing the NBA has taught us, it's that when the door to a big move starts to open, it can take a while, but when it happens, it changes everything at once. And now I'm going to tell you something very direct. If a movement like this really left the field of what if and became a serious behind-the-scenes conversation, the entire NBA would feel the impact right away. It's not just the Celtics getting stronger. It's the East changing ownership. It's a rival adjusting its plan in a hurry. It's the type of change that changes the way everyone sees the season. Because it's one thing to respect the Celtics. It's another thing to look at the table and think, how can I get past this team in a 7-game series? Then it's no longer the opponent's hope. It's survival. And that's why I want to leave you with this image in your head. TD Garden in a playoff mood. the defense in place, the game tightening, and Boston with that feeling that it has an answer for everything. This is the difference between being a candidate and being inevitable. And if this story is real, if this rumor has any percentage of life, we could be seeing the beginning of a chapter that changes the next decade. Now it's up to you, you aper. Are you interested in this change, or do you think it's too expensive? Do you want to see the Celtics go all in, or would you prefer to protect the future? Comment your opinion below, because I will read and respond to the most intelligent and controversial comments too, without fear. And for those of you who enjoy deeper content, the kind where you finish the video and feel like you really understood the game, go to the pinned comment now and click on the Celtics Analysis playlist. That's where I leave the most complete analyses, with context, roster reading, rotation adjustments, and everything that really matters when it comes to the Boston Celtics. Go on, marathon this playlist, and then come back here to tell me which analysis opened your mind the most.